Hello and welcome back to another episode of CRNA School Prep Academy. I'm your host, Jenny Fennell, CRNA, and welcome back, future CRNA. So today we're going to discuss is CRNA school really as hard as they say it is? I would love to kind of essentially set your expectations and be really realistic with you guys as far as what it actually looks like to be in CRNA school. So I'm going to save 3 things at the end of this episode that you can do today to really help you as far as make your transition as smooth as possible once you gain acceptance to CRNA school. So make sure you stay around to the end. So first, I want you to assess what your current daily routine looks like. I want you to assess what things within your day and week and your routine are things that you absolutely cannot live without, and what are things that you do for fun or things that are essentially extras that maybe you don't necessarily have to do. And then I want you to try to make a different list between those two different areas. Things that you have to do, things that you want to do. And then out of the things that you want to do, what are some things that are a given that you definitely can't get rid of because they really help you both emotionally and mentally be happy? So that is kind of what I want you to start off as far as your first assignment for this episode, is to really get clear on what your routine typically looks like, and are there things that you could essentially remove out of your daily and weekly life that wouldn't affect your overall happiness. Because the reality is, in CRNA school, you're going to need to make some sacrifices. Now, I want to make sure you understand that I'm not saying cut out everything you enjoy. As I just said, I want you to make sure there are some things that you do enjoy throughout your time in CRNA school. That is going to be key and very important in making sure you keep a good mindset and make sure that your happiness is supported. So don't get me wrong, just cut out the things that that can wait, essentially till after school. So you will be needing to make some sacrifices. As far as what a typical day looks like as a current student, this can vary program to program, student to student. It also depends on whether your program is front-loaded or integrated. Both types of formats are very heavy and very fast-paced. So the only key difference is how soon you start clinical. And what I will say is that academic pressure and stress is different than the clinical pressure and stress. They're both very hard. They're both very challenging. But sometimes when you have them combined together, it can definitely present some challenges. However, the benefit of being in clinical while you are actively learning your didactic portion of schooling is you're able to apply the knowledge right away. And sometimes that actually helps you learn the information quicker and better. The other caveat to being in an integrated program is, let's just say you're in your open heart rotation, but you're actually learning peds in school. So now essentially you're on your own to learn cardiac because you have, to do that for clinical, but then you have to go home and study pediatrics so you can pass your exams. So that's another thing about integrated programs that can be more challenging. Front-loaded programs, they try to get everything out of the way right away, but then it's really up to you to refresh your knowledge when you get to your specialty rotations, because it could have been quite some time between learning the information and actually applying it in clinical. So again, both formats work. Both of them are equally will set you up for success. However, there are just some small differences I want to make sure you're well aware of. Now, when you start your CRNA program, even if you're an integrated versus didactic, you are looking at about 8 hours a day of schoolwork, followed by probably 3 to 4 hours of studying. So again, that is anywhere from, I would say, about 10 to 12 hours is a pretty good estimate as far as how much per day that you can be expected to be contributing to some type of schoolwork or studying or looking something up or, things of that nature. For me, we would drive to class from 8 a.m. till 3 p.m. and, we had a 2-hour drive there, 2-hour drive back. We used that time to study. We also carpooled and used that time, again, like I said, to kind of collaborate with my classmates to try to help each other out, and we studied during that time. So that 4 hours, I should say, we only studied for 2 hours of that 4 because the other 2 was coming back from class, and we usually had to zone out, check out. We needed a mental break at that point because we had been studying from 6 a.m. till 3 p.m. So we were like completely toasted when it comes to needing a mental break. So we drove home and chatted, right? And just were there for each other, supported each other. So that worked. But then, like, for example, I got home from class around 6 p.m., to have dinner, okay, cool. Now it's 7 p.m., 7:30, from 8 to 10 p.m., I would study or I would get ready for the next day. So that's typically, what my day looked like in school, from driving 2 hours away at 6 a.m. and then leaving class around 3:30, 4 o'clock, getting home around 6 o'clock, eating dinner, and then studying from 8 to 10. That was my typical day. Now, again, if you don't have that far to commute to go to class, you may be able to shave some hours off there and get up at 7 o'clock and go to class at 8 o'clock. I was getting up at 5 o'clock every day for 2 years straight so I could be in class, either class or clinical. So my days were really long, 12, 13, 14-hour days, Monday through Friday for the most part. So I did that for 2 years straight. Was it hard? Yeah, but I really knew what I was out to do. I had a mission. I had a passion to become a CRNA. And for me, that was a small sacrifice to make. But I had to set myself up for that, meaning I had to really thoroughly prepare my friends and family for that kind of a commitment. And don't get me wrong, I still took some time for myself, mostly on the weekends. Say Saturday, maybe I studied for from 9 a.m. till 2 p.m., for example. But then I had my afternoon to where I usually took time for myself. Now, when I studied on my own, and even in class, you'll get breaks intermittently. And as I spoke to, we took 2 hours on the drive home to kind of have a mental break. So that was our mental break for the day. I always broke up my study sessions into small chunks so I could make sure that I kept my mind right. When I got fatigued, I would step away. A lot of times I would even take naps. My little my hour power nap. I mean, I don't get the nap anymore. I wish I could. But Mama 3, no nap time for mom. But I would take naps back then because I didn't have kids. And for the most part, it was just me and my husband, and our little dog. So that was really nice that I had the ability to do that. Now, not everyone's going to. So I encourage you to seek out things that you need. Meaning if you need a break, if you need a mental nap time, if you know that's important to you, it's funny, one of the first CSPA students, when we started CRNA School Prep Academy, she is almost done with school now, but she still routinely takes naps, and she's a mama 3 or mama 2. I apologize, mama 2, and she works in her naps into her schedule because for her, she needs that mental rest, and she knows that she needs that in order to do well. So it can happen as long as you build it into your schedule. Nowadays with so many schools going virtual, it is much more flexible with you being able to be home and essentially learn. I know a lot of programs are excited and probably getting students back into class, and I do think that is the best way to learn really challenging information. But I also think a lot of programs have kept some of the virtual components of their program because it is just easier and nicer for the students to have that flexibility in their schedule. So keep that in mind that, me back when I went, it was all in person. There was nothing virtually. So it meant driving, to class, driving home. Now, a lot of schools are keeping an online format, which does save you time and driving and money. So that's a bonus. But I still think you should plan on average anywhere between 10 to 12-hour days, Monday through Friday, to do your schoolwork, with in mind that you're taking an hour lunch break, maybe an hour gym break, maybe 15 minutes, 20 minutes here and there, whatever you need throughout the day. So even though it's 12 hours of committed to doing work, 2 hours of that time may be taking breaks. And maybe it's a break, but maybe it's a study break, meaning like for me, I would take my notes to the gym, and yes, that was my break time, but I would sit on my ARC trainer, listen to some pop music to get me energized, and I would actually study at the gym. And then I would take a half hour of that hour and a half gym session, and I would mentally zone out, just listen to music, lift weights. But I always got an hour cardio in, followed by a half hour of weights. And so that half hour weight time was like my no thinking time, just listening to my music and enjoying myself. But the hour portion of my workout was typically studying my notes. And I did that in undergrad, and that worked really well for me. It just always stuck with me. Something about moving my body and listening to something I enjoy, getting my energy up, really helped me retain and understand the knowledge I was taking in. So try it, see if you like it. But that was kind of my routine. So again, class days were pretty long. If I had a virtual, now if I could think how things are today and I had it virtually, I probably would have gotten up at 7, class 8 to 3, maybe from, 4 to 5, take a break, take a breather, go to the gym, do something for myself, maybe 6 o'clock, eat dinner, maybe 7 o'clock, then I could study from 7 to 9 and call my night earlier so I get a good night's rest. I do think getting a good night's rest is really vital to your mental health and your ability to learn. So don't neglect that. Do not pull all-nighters. I promise you they're not worth it. They don't help. It's better off to get a good night, go to bed and get up early in the morning, in my opinion, and really hit the books hard in the morning before your test versus trying to stay up and struggle because you're already fatigued and tired from being up all day. So that's just my piece of advice is to know when to call it quits. Know when you need a break. Know when you're staring at a page and nothing's absorbing. That means you need to stop. That means you need to take a break. I would go to Panera quite often and study for quite some time because I knew I had to get out of the house away from the distractions. But I would intermittently take breaks and zone out and do something else instead of actually studying. Back then I didn't, cell phones were a little different. Social media was a little different, but I would play Candy Crush back then for my 15-minute zone out break. But I would intermittently take little small breaks if I felt like I was getting fatigued. I always listened to music. I always usually had coffee or some kind of stimulant to keep me peppy. Sometimes mints, gum, candy, probably ate too many sugar cookies from Panera. But either way, I found things to kind of keep my interest. And I also remember doing fun things like trying to associate terms, whether they're good or bad, and what that meant, and trying to make fun acronyms, and then trying to rehearse those acronyms and just recite them, make fun little songs. Sometimes I would even find myself just, listening to music and kind of, moving my hands along as I'm studying, just anything to keep me kind of intrigued. And what I'm learning, it kind of helped me spice it up. I would also routinely ask myself questions as I studied. But again, you need to figure out a way to keep yourself interested in what you're learning. So it's not just about the hours. I guess is what I'm getting at. So is CRNA school really that hard? If you can keep your interest in what you're learning and keep studying effectively, it doesn't have to be that hard. You can enjoy what you're learning and do it efficiently so you're not spending 16 hours a day studying. But again, I think on average, most students spend about 10 to 12 hours a day, for the most part, committed to doing some type of schoolwork. I also want to encourage you to know what time of day you're at your peak. What time of day are you the most focused? Save challenging tasks for that time of day, if you can. If you're able to set aside tasks that you're dreading, that you just don't want to do, pick the time of day that you can be the most laser focused. So like for me, for example, I don't do well at night. Like if I get to be 6 p.m. at night past that, I need easy tasks at that point because I'm mentally fatigued. I'm tired from the day. I don't get good work done. It's really slow and painful at that point. I can do it, but it's not my best work. But my prime time where I'm like really, really like go-getter power mode is right around 10 a.m. to like about noon. That's like my prime time to handle really challenging tasks. So I set aside really hard tasks for that time during the day. So I encourage you to think about what that is for you. Some people are early risers and at like 5 a.m. they're ready to go, but then by 10 a.m. they're kind of tired. So again, know what time of day works best for you for your attention span, and then put hard tasks during that time. I mentioned sacrifices. You really need to understand what you need at minimum and keep that around and have a few extras in your life, but everything else, it may need to wait till you're done with school. And this really goes into play where you need to let your friends and family know this. I mean, you're not going to take every girl's trip anymore or a guy's trip. You're not going to make it home for every birthday party, every bachelorette party, wedding, etc. Especially for those of you who are traveling out of state to go to CRNA school, it's expensive and it's time consuming to travel. So you have to let your friends and family know that you're not going to be able to afford to go back and forth all the time. You may only make it home once or twice a year while you're in CRNA school, which can be really hard. And, these days, you guys, utilize all the virtual platforms, connect often and frequently with friends and family via Zoom or via FaceTime, because you definitely still need that support. I'm not saying don't talk to friends and family. I'm just saying you may not be able to go home to have, a fun adventure, all the time, like maybe you were accustomed to. But you still need that in your life and in a big way. So please don't neglect family, but just limit, the time and money that's related to hanging out with friends and family. Try to find other ways that are more affordable and less time consuming to still get that interaction with your friends and family. And of course, sometimes take time for yourself and go hang out with your friends and family, 100%. do it. So another thing I want to kind of bridge into is ICU knowledge. You can, is CRNA school really that hard? Well, it can be if you're really behind in your ICU knowledge. Now, a lot of schools will assess for this in the interview, but not all schools do. Some schools are like, well, as long as your personality fits the bill, that stuff's teachable. And that is 100% true. However, you know yourself the best, and you know that if you're behind on pathophysiology, pharmacology, those kinds of key concepts, chemistry, physics, those types of things, you're probably going to have a little more of a rockier transition into CRNA school. So while I don't propose you to go out and read every textbook known to mankind. In fact, that is exactly why we just created the Nurse Anesthesia Resident Boot Camp that we just released for CRNA School Prep Academy, because we really want you to only spend about an hour to 2 hours a week really in a pre-anesthesia curriculum prior to starting school, because we want you to enjoy your life and want you to have fun before you start school. But I do think it's really valuable for you to really brush up on areas that you are weak on, so you again can assess your blind spots so you have an easier time transitioning into the role of a nurse anesthesia resident. So keep that in mind. Hey, future CRNA, I have a really amazing resource for you, and it's free and it's down below. It is a cardiovascular drip guide or pocket reference that you can use during your time as an ICU nurse. It just so happens that in the CRNA school interview, the most common drugs asked about are cardiovascular drugs. So it's going to be a great study tool for you as well. So go ahead and grab your free resource. Cheers to your future, and back to the show. Budgeting. Budgeting is really key. You have to know what you need. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. You have to know what you need to know what you need to take for student loans. And you also need to know what kind of grace do you need, meaning plan for your car to break down, plan for your dog to get sick, plan for some unexpected life events to happen, because inevitably life still happens despite CRNA school. So I want to make sure you're not setting yourself up so close, so down to the wire that you don't have any wiggle room. Like for me, for example, I had my car break down, our dog got deathly sick. I got asked to be a maid of honor in a wedding that was out of state. That was like my friend from like the last, from the time I was 15 years old. So it was like, okay, well, I want to do that. I have to do that. So that was very costly for me. So, luckily I had budgeted for things like that. Now, even though I had budgeted for things like that, I still blew through that very quickly. And by the time I was done with school, I ended up taking on some credit card debt so I could get through to my first paycheck. But that being said, the fact that it's so easy to do, just make sure you have some wiggle room. Make sure you take out extra student loans. Give yourself the cushion. What I always thought about doing when I was in school was, I'm going to take all the loans I can get, even if I don't need it. I'm going to take them all. I'll put that extra money aside in my emergency fund, and if I use it, okay, cool, I have it. If I don't, when I graduate, I will make a lump sum payment to my student loans right away to give back that money. Yes, you do pay interest on it, but it's peace of mind knowing you're going to be okay, knowing that you guys will have the cash if you need it. So that's just something to keep in mind. But budgeting really comes down to knowing what you need, what's the minimum you need every month, so that way you understand what you need to live on. And then also looking for ways, is there ways that you can cut back? Like for us, we got rid of cable. We cut back on how much we went out to eat, movies, stuff like that. I mean, we didn't really do that kind of stuff when I was in school. We were able to cut our budget by $200 or $300 a month by just looking for things like that to cut out. I already mentioned how support is really, really vital, but it's important to have these conversations ahead of time, because you want to make sure that your significant other really understands the burden and the stress that you're getting ready to endure. So they are supportive. So they give you that space. So they give you that grace. And so making sure they're well aware of what's to come. CRNA school will be way harder without good support, which is why I'm mentioning this, because you need someone to be okay with you being less than what you typically are. Meaning, like, if you're used to juggling all the scheduling for your kids and grocery shopping and cleaning and I don't know. I mean, you know how life goes. You take on all the responsibilities, and now you have a giant burden of 10 to 12 hours a day of schooling. You're not going to be able to keep up with all your previous tasks. And so it's important to have these conversations early and often to make sure whoever is in your life knows either A, things are not going to get done, or it's going to be a mess for a while, and being okay with that, or can they pick up the slack and seeing if there's a way, or asking friends and family to pick up the slack, maybe having your parents help watch the kids or do some grocery shopping or come over and help you with laundry, whatever it is. Don't be afraid to say yes. Thank you. I'll take the help. So practice saying yes. And I'm speaking from a place of I'm equally struggle saying yes to help. And there's been so many times where people have offered me help and I've said, no, I'm okay. And then I'm like, oh, and I regret it later because I'm like, no, I really need the help. Dang it, Jenny. So I'm speaking from a place of understanding that it is hard, that you do want to do it all, but sometimes you can burn yourself into the ground by doing that. So just, making sure you're taking the support where you need it. Lastly, before I get to the top 3 things you could be doing right now to really ease your transition, is setting your expectations. Expectations are really huge. So I know a lot of you are probably preparing for the worst, right? You're probably like, okay, I'm bracing myself for impact, right? But the problem with that is you're kind of setting the expectation that things are going to be difficult. And call it fluff and buff. I promise you, though, it's true, so embrace it for me. If you think something's going to be hard, it's going to be hard. If you think something's going to be easy, it may not be easy, but you're going to accept the challenge and get through it, right? And not even easy. I wouldn't say easy is a good thing to like, oh, this is going to be easy, I'm going to do it. You're going to think, okay, this is going to be challenging, but I'm going to be able to handle it. I'll be okay. So, because even some of the best things in life that are so rewarding, like becoming a parent, for example, it is so incredibly hard, right? It's so hard for so many reasons, but it's also incredibly rewarding. And one of the best things you can ever get to accomplish in your life. Same thing with anesthesia school. It's incredibly hard, but it's going to be one of the best accomplishments you ever make in your life. And so, like, the expectation to being like, yes, it's going to be challenging, but I'm here for it, right? I'm showing up, raising my hand, bring it, right? So you can do it. You got here for a reason. You made it into CRNA school because you are more than capable of completing CRNA school. These schools are good pickers. They can sniff you out. They know you're capable, and you need to know you're capable. And you need to set the expectation that, yes, things are going to be challenging. Things are going to get rough sometimes, but I will be okay. I will figure it out. We'll make it work. You're a survivor. You're here. You wouldn't have made it this far if you were not capable. I'm here to tell you that right now. So setting the expectation that, okay, it's going to be challenging, but so is a lot of things in life. This is just one more of them, and you will be okay. So the last 3 things that I want to share with you today that you can really start working on today to really help you transition into CRNA school and make it not so difficult, not so hard on yourself is, first and foremost, mindset. We just kind of spoke about expectations, but expectations play into mindset. And it's essentially adapting the no, not yet, no's not never, and not taking things personally is a huge thing in CRNA school because you're going to have so many preceptors, tell you their way and show you how they like it. And that's going to make you feel like, well, am I wrong? Or is my technique not that great? No, it's your technique. I mean, every time I'm even with a CRNA that I don't routinely work with because they don't come in my OR, but if I'm helping out, I'm like, oh, I'll see something they're doing differently than me. It doesn't mean I'm wrong or they're right. It's just we all have our own ways. And so as a student, you're continuously put in that position, though. So sometimes you can maybe be led to believe that you're not good enough or you're not enough, but recognize when you do that to yourself because that's not going to get you going forward. Those types of thoughts keep you stuck in fear. When you're fearful, you do 2 things: run or stand and rise. So fear is a natural human instinct that's really designed to essentially keep you safe, right? So the 2 options is run, so you're not going to move forward, or you're going to stand and you're going to rise to the challenge, right? So in CRNA school, you need to stand and rise to the challenge. And when you have the mindset that you're not enough, are you going to feel like you're going to rise to the challenge? No. So you have to address this now. And, so many of the students I work with in clinical, you guys, and I tell this to my students too, because I'm like, it's so frustrating to me because I see students who struggle with mindset all the time. But if you were to ask them prior to starting school, they would say, oh no, I got this. I'm good. I'm not worried about it at all. And I'm not trying to make you worry, but I'm also trying to make you be aware of your thoughts so you can recognize when it starts to happen. Because most students are totally fine when they start their programs. Yes, they may be scared, they may be nervous, maybe fearful of, not doing well, but I encourage you to recognize why that is occurring and address it right now. Why? I know everyone in life, no one wants to fail, but the reality is, would you fail if you've made it this far? More than likely not. If you do these things that I just talked about, as far as setting up your support, budgeting, making sacrifices, knowing what you're capable of, and making sure you're supporting yourself, you're not going to fail. You wouldn't be here. Like I just said before, these programs are really good pickers. They picked you for a reason because you're going to be successful. All right. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to keep any of these programs open because none of their students would pass. So the reality is you are capable. So the mindset piece of this is so vital to your success. And so, CRNA school, if you have the right mindset, it's just a challenge. It's not hard. It's just a challenge. And so it's nothing that it's not going to kill you. You're going to move on. My goal though is for you to graduate and not have PTSD. I want you to get through CRNA school and be happy and proud of yourself and excited for your future. And you will be, but I also want to see your time in school not be so miserable that you feel like a shell of a person, that you're so burnt out that you don't even know who you are anymore. And you guys, that happens and it's unfortunate. And so that's why I think if you start addressing mindset now, today, you will be way better off in the long run, because I want to try to prevent that from happening to you. Don't be afraid to see a therapist. Don't be ashamed of seeing a therapist. Oh my gosh, they're amazing. They're there for a reason, because us as humans, we need help sometimes, right? And it's okay. I recently had a therapist. I had postpartum depression. I was like, okay, Jenny, I gotta figure this out, because I know I'm in a bad place. So how can I keep going? And the answer was therapy. And that's okay. I'm not ashamed of that. No one should be ashamed of that. But sometimes in life, you're going to need an extra person to support you. And sometimes realistically, it can't be your significant other. It has to be someone who's not emotionally attached to you. And that's okay to seek that out. You should be seeking out if you need it. So that's number one. Number two is study techniques. Okay. So many of you probably, maybe not, I don't know about so many of you. I don't know. Maybe, would you say like half of you guys think that nursing school was not too bad? Or maybe some of you are like, no, nursing school, was hard. If you're in my boat, I thought nursing school was hard. I worked so hard to get the grades I did in nursing school. And I always felt like people around me didn't work that hard. And I was like, well, here I am, like just spending twice as long. And I'm, barely getting the grades that you're getting, spending half the amount of time. And yes, it did feel unfair. For the longest time, I was like, this just isn't fair. But you know what, guys? Life isn't fair. And it doesn't mean anything's wrong with you. Everyone's different in how they need to study and how much time it takes them. And I will say, though, that sometimes when you do struggle, it actually helps you build grit, which will only serve you later in life. So honestly, I'm very, I'm happy with my past, because I think it made me who I am today. I think it has allowed me to be gritty and to be disciplined and determined. But I'm speaking this now because there are some people who, yes, they did really, really well in nursing school, but now they're getting ready to face a kind of different bar as far as challenge. And the reason why CRNA school is so challenging is not because the information is so mind-blowingly hard. It's because of the amount of information they will throw at you at once. And so you could have a good study technique, but if it's not efficient, you're not going to keep up. Then what do you do if you fall behind? You cram. You try to memorize, and that doesn't help you for the long term, for your finals, for boards. And so this is a bad spiral that you can get into in CRNA school if you don't have efficient study techniques. So that's why I want to point this out, to start assessing. Have you tried different strategies? Write down what works for you, what hasn't worked for you, what else you can try to think of different things. I actually just recently made a post on this recently and had some insight. It's funny. I'm going to shout out Jason Bolt here on the show, because he mentioned how he would also record his notes and play it overnight when he slept. And it's funny because I tried that technique in undergrad because I was struggling in undergrad, and I didn't get into the College of Nursing, so I didn't have good enough grades. And so I spent like a summer taking courses and Googling every study technique that I could find on Google, and I tried them all with a full course load of courses that summer. And that was one of the things I tried. And I wasn't certain if that actually ever helped me. So I didn't continue to do that. But what I did do instead, and I did this even in grad school, was I knew sleep was important, right? Because sleep is where you really build your neurons connect, and you make all the connections in your brain with the material that you just learned. So I knew I had to get good sleep. And I often struggled sleeping very well, if I'm being perfectly honest. I did go through a period of life where I had insomnia, things like that. So I actually got these CDs that are tone of the music is such that it's supposed to put you in REM sleep. I still, to this day, play a CD every single night when I go to sleep. I love them. Like, they help me so much. So I encourage you to play with it. I mean, for me, I didn't want to listen to my notes, but if I had something relaxing to get me to sleep quicker and get me in a deep sleep, helps my knowledge, right? It helps me build the connections and understanding I need to be successful. And so I also want to point out too, the whole study technique. If you're aiming to memorize, bad. You don't want to memorize. Memorizing doesn't help you understand. And there's going to be test questions that you're going to be like, ooh, I don't know it, but I do know this. And then you're going to think, then you're going to write down. Like, what I would do is I would brain dump what I do know that's around the question topic, but I don't know the question. And then sometimes I still wouldn't know it. And I'd be like, oh, but I wrote down what I did know. I don't know. And yes, you can do this on class tests where you can maybe move forward and backward. But boards, you have to pick and go on. But so don't rely on this method. But sometimes I would give it my best guess at that point as far as what the answer was. And then after a few more test questions, sometimes another test question would jog my memory because it was related. And I built that connection piece, that understanding piece, that if this is this, this is this. And oh, it relates to that and that and this and that. And so when you do that, when you build the understanding, you can unravel really complex questions. Even if you don't 100% know the answer, you're able to make a really well-educated guess. So that is why understanding is so vital to your success in CRNA school. Lastly, it's time management, guys. I know this seems so kind of basic, but it's so incredibly important. Time management will save you time and time again. As I spoke to earlier, knowing what time of day works really best for you as far as your attention span. But prioritizing and setting boundaries is huge. Prioritizing what's going on, being organized. That's a big part of time management, is just staying organized. Have a daily planner, whether that's virtual daily planner or like pen and paper. However it works, some people have whiteboards in their offices. I have a calendar on our refrigerator. Maybe when you walk in and out of the door, we have another board. When we walk in and out of our garage, we have a Monday through Sunday board that if we have something that is major during the week, we'll write it there. Any way that works for you to remember what your obligations are for the week is really, really vital. So time management, setting boundaries, and that comes to your friends and family, because if they expect you to hang out with them as much as you hung out with them prior to starting school, they're in for a rude awakening when you start telling them no all the time. And not everyone's going to understand, and they're going to take it personally, right? Because people inherently always think it's about them, when in reality it's not about them at all. So you have to inform them that, hey, I may say no to you more often, but it's not because I don't want to hang out. It's because I have grad school. I have this obligation. I'm spending tons of time and money getting this degree, and it's going to require 50, 60 hours a week of my time. So, and that also is when I want to paint a realistic picture that, if you're spending 10 to 12 hours a day doing schoolwork, sometimes on the weekend, you're even also studying, but, maybe it's only 6 hours on the weekend, but, it's still a lot. It still adds up to be right around 60-ish hours a week for, I would say, the average anesthesia student. So keep that in mind. But that's your full-time job, right? Which is also why programs, a lot of programs don't allow you to work during their programs, because they do worry even 8 hours a week is a lot when you're already, plugging in 60 hours a week in your anesthesia training. Clinicals on average, you guys, is right around 32 to 34 hours a week, I would say. Some programs are probably more than that, but if you were to research your school, a lot of programs will report the average amount of hours students spend in clinical. So if it's exceptionally high compared to the other schools you've researched, it probably could be a pretty good indicator that you might be plugging in more than 32 hours a week in clinical if you go to that program. So other thing to kind of keep in mind. I probably shouldn't, I'm trying to mention this too. If you're a mom or a parent and you have obligations after 3 p.m., and if you get stuck in clinical, it's really, really key and vital to make sure you have a backup plan to go pick up someone. But of course, if you have an emergency, if you're not feeling well, you have to speak up and you have to let people know. I think it's always best to say this first thing in the morning. Like if you have something major going on after clinical, say, hey, I'm really excited for my day today, but I just want to give you the heads up that I have this going on and, I can't stay past 4 o'clock today, or whatever it is. Those are the types of things that you need to be letting your student coordinator know, as well as your program. Okay, if you have something major going on in your life, you need to let people know about that. But anyways, back to time management. I think, the boundary piece as far as telling people no, is really, really vital and really key. You know, if I had said yes to everything that I was asked to do in grad school, I would have studied way less and probably struggled a lot more. So, yeah, keep that in mind that, you know, while I'm not saying do say no to everything, you have to be selective. You know, I still managed to be a maid of honor that was out of town. I still managed to meet my girlfriends intermittently for, you know, a night out. We even took a vacation in grad school. So it's not impossible to still enjoy your time. You still have plenty of time when you're in grad school, but it really comes down to sacrificing things that otherwise you would want to do. But, you know, maybe it's just not the right time. And if you have young kids, I mean, involve them in what you're doing so they feel part of your success. You know, maybe after school we all go to Disney together. So, you know, when I graduate, that's our reward, is to take a family vacation. Let your kids in on that excitement of like you accomplishing that. So that way, when you're pulling late hours and you're not there to tuck them in, or when you miss something because you have a school obligation, they can kind of feel like, okay, but they're doing this for us. They're sacrificing now for this grad program, so we as a family can do more fun things together. And just be honest with your family on what that's going to look like after school, so they understand when some hard times come about that you're ultimately doing this so there's better days ahead. So I hope you guys really enjoyed this episode, and thank you so very much for tuning in. I would really appreciate if you guys left me leave me a review. I appreciate it. It helps other people know that this podcast is helpful, and thank you so much. Cheers to your future. I'll see you next week.